how do you work on idea generation? I'm excited about your answer.
Oh, man. I mean, people are different on this. I'm a Myers-Briggs ENFP. And what's true of, you are too, that's right.
Absolutely am.
So what's true of us is we like to process verbally. We process with our senses. And so I had a great meeting this morning where ideas are just flowing. But it was me and the right people with flip charts and whiteboards, and we're playing what if, and we can kind of touch it because it's up on the wall and mess with it, and it's very much what I call just clay on the wheel. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just throw something on the wheel, and I'll say something and ask a question, and then someone else will start talking, and I'll make me think of something, so I'll capture it on the whiteboard, and it's like jazz. Like I'm just feeding off a group of people. So that's where I do best, and I only do that well if I've been reading, if I've been watching some content on YouTube about things that are inspiring.
I'm going to talk about that in a second.
I've been to events, I've been to conferences, so you got to understand, like I'm a consummate learner, intake sponge for all this stuff. I can't walk into a room like that and it be valuable if I'm not charged up. But I come in on full batteries, and then a group of people like that who are smart, oh my gosh, we're printing money, we're making impact, we're clarifying mission statements, we're launching product ideas. I mean, that's the best.
I'm so excited. We did not talk about this ahead of time. I'm going to jump right in where he left off, because while you were talking, I was saying, all right, here's what I'm going to give an analogy. Okay, but let me say this before I give you an analogy. This question is huge. I'm going to tell you point blank, I believe that ideas are the currency of leadership.
Oh, totally.
Ideas. So the question is, how do you work on idea generation? He touched on it. I like the analogy of a well. The old school well. You turn the crank, the bucket goes all the way down, you fill it full of water, you crank it, and it comes back up.
Have you ever used one of those?
I have, an old school well.
Never have.
Did it one time, and I did the whole thing, and the bucket was empty. It was when I was probably 11 or 12 at a plantation. All right. Historic plantation. But here's what I believe it is, and he touched on it. I don't work on generating ideas. Ideas are like the water that's in the bucket. When I pull it out of the well, I go into a meeting like he just talked about, and he's been in a meeting with me, and nobody's ever been in an idea meeting with me where I didn't have a bunch of ideas. But I'm not coming up with them there. It is essentially, I pull that bucket out of the well, and I dump it out on the table.
It flows out of something.
So what you were talking about is how you fill the bucket.
That's right.
So Daniel and I, both of us, ferocious readers, consumers of content. So in the Ken Coleman show world specifically, in EntreLeadership, I'm always reading and digesting and watching other people who speak on this kind of stuff. I read psychology articles so I can help the callers on the Ken Coleman show, because it's getting behind their career question. So I'm learning techniques and things like that all the time.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting at my desk for 5 minutes and an idea hits me, that idea didn't just bounce from nowhere.
Yes.
It actually bounced from maybe 6 weeks ago, when I read one article and essentially put it in the bucket, and then whatever happened in that moment. So back to that simple little analogy, folks, you have got to have a well from which you draw ideas. You cannot go into a meeting and brainstorm and pull an idea from thin air. It must come from what I like to call the inner well.
Absolutely.
So that's what I...
Well, and and this is probably going to offend some people.
Go for it.
But here's the thing.
I can't wait.
There's no such thing as an original thought.
None.
Now,
That's none.
There's an original way
There's an original
to arrange all the Legos.
Yeah, it's like a prism.
But all those Legos came from somewhere.
That's
you read something, you saw something. You have a relationship, somebody told you something. Some of it's in your conscious mind, some of it's in your subconscious mind. And curating those things and putting them into a combination that we call an idea. Oh, I have an original idea. Okay, cool. But it's only going to be good if you're doing all the work you're talking about, go into the well all the time so your batteries are charged and it just flows out of you. If you just want to sit down and be smart and be brilliant in the moment, you can't do it.
Happen.
No, it's not going to happen.
And by the way, we've all been around people who have no well.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, listen.
They're parched.
And by the way, you will be exposed.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, if you're sitting there right now, this is friendly advice, and we'll move on. If you're sitting there right now and you know that you have no well from which you're drawing a bucket up from, it's only a matter of time before you're exposed.
But here's the encouragement. You're not, because you're listening to this podcast
and now you're
probably doing other things like that. So, I mean, I listen to so many, I listen to our podcast. I listen to so many other podcasts. I'm on YouTube all the time, checking out who's saying what. Not like goofy cat waste your time videos. Like, there's a lot of good content on YouTube of smart people. So charging your batteries in 2019 is easier than it has ever been in the history of time.
All right,
the well is so accessible.
It's absolutely exciting. Okay, now I'm going to expand this question. The question as it was submitted was, what's the best book you've read this year? But I'm going to change it up because I can.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, if it's not the best book this year, is there a book that you really, maybe you read it a year ago or 2 years ago, and you go, here is a must-read book? Because that's what I really want to know is, what book would you most recommend to this audience?
So there's, I'll tell you my book in a second. But first I want to tell you something that's more valuable.
This is very exciting.
The best book you can read is the book you read. I have had people ask me over and over, what's the best book? What's the best podcast? What's the best diet? The best diet's the one you're going to stick with for the most part.
My favorite diet is a seafood diet.
Okay.
I seafood and I eat it.
Then you eat it, all right?
Yeah.
That works for you. But you've got to figure out how to get above this. I got to find the gym.
Yeah, that's right.
And go, am I committed to spending $2,000 a year in buying and reading books? That's a more important discussion. And if I'm constantly buying books and I'm constantly reading, you don't have to finish one that's bad. But if you go, I'm going to spend $2,000 a year reading books, and it's going to be a lifestyle, and I'm always consuming, just like we were talking about before, some of them are going to be better for you than others, but your best book may not be someone else's favorite book. So that's the pretense. My favorite book right now that's really done a lot for me in just this last few months is Brené Brown's new book, Daring to Lead. And she really gets into some practical things leaders can do to live authentically, to be themselves, to show up with courage, to not put on armor to where we posture and we're trying to figure out how to play the game, but to really do it through relationships. We talked earlier about leaders. You start out getting known for getting results, but you really get good when you're getting good at relationships that are authentic and that are real, but it's rich, meaningful. You were just talking about this coming in here. When you have someone that you know they're your friend, whether you're doing business together or not, it changes everything about how you work together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't get me started on friendship. To be honest with you, we need to have a friendship-themed podcast. I'm just saying this right now because I don't think the average man or woman who's leading really thinks about deep friendships as much as we ought to. It's life-giving.
I agree.
Okay, so real quick, I'll roll through this fast because we got a special offer we want to tell these kind folks about. I think my favorite book this year for this audience, here's the good news. We had a feature interview with Dan Heath. Chip and Dan Heath have written several bestsellers together. They got a book about the power of moments. And I got to tell you something. As a guy who, candidly, I've got to do interviews for this program that enrich you kind folks. I've got to ask questions that hopefully get answers out of our guests that can really help you. Having a radio show every day where I'm helping people with career advice, speaking on a stage in front of 6,000 people 2 months ago. It's beyond the personal benefit. It's how do you strategically create moments for your team members, people that follow you, people that you do life with, your friends and family. And then if you have a chance to have an audience, so this is for those of you who don't speak publicly, but you do have an audience, you have a customer. So how do you create moments? And that whole book is just a treasure trove. So anyway, that's the book I'd recommend. But we can go deeper than this because the EntreLeadership team has put together a list of 100 books. Now this is an ambitious venture. Like you and I could have a fun argument about what are the 100 books, but we're not going to do that. We've got a great list of 100 books that every small business owner needs to read. If you'd like to get the list, and why wouldn't you? It's absolutely free, and you can do what you want with the list, but I would read every one of them. Text 100 books, that's a phrase. 100 is just the numbers, 100 books. Text 100 books to 33444. That's 33444. Or you can get the link in this episode's show notes, EntreLeadership.com. It's episode 298.